How's it going, everyone? Bass here. So recently, Mike Clay from ESPN put out his annual team unit grades and rankings. Basically, what this is it takes every position group from every team, ranks them on importance, and then gives them a value up to 4.0. So today in this video, I wanted to go over this chart, go over where the Packers rank overall and also in every position group. But before I get started, if you are new here and want more Packers news analysis and updates with training camp right around the corner, please consider going down and clicking the subscribe button. It supports my channel a ton, as well as leaving a like on the video. So if I bring up the chart real quick, obviously it looks like a lot right now from you first seeing it, but we see at the top there's percentage values. Basically what this is, it shows how important the overall position is comparative to the team. Quarterback being highest with a 28% and running back being the lowest with a 3%. Basically what that means, if you have a very high quarterback ranking, that'll do more for your overall team ranking than a very high running back ranking would, which makes sense. If you have an elite quarterback, you're going to play better as a team than having a bad quarterback and an elite running back. Then below that, across all the teams, we see a bunch of different number values ranging from 0.1 to 4.0, red being better, blue being worse. All right, so now let's go over each group for the Green Bay Packers and see where they rank with the rest of the league. So to start things off with quarterback, the most important position on this list, the Packers have a 4.0, which is number one in the NFL. Back-to-back MVP at quarterback. This shouldn't be a shock to anyone. Nothing really to talk about here. Then as for running back, the Packers have a 3.1 grade here, which is 8th best in the NFL. Personally, I think that should be a little bit higher. I believe Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon are one of the best 1-2 punches in the entire NFL. And personally, I just don't see the likes of the Cowboys, Broncos ahead of them, which they are on this list. I think the Browns surely are. I think Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb are a great duo there. They have a 4.0, the best ranking you could have. And then the Titans are 3.6 just because of Derrick Henry, which makes sense. I kind of see the Packers more of a 3.5 than a 3.1, but I'm not too mad at this overall. All right, so now we get into their lowest ranking on the entire team, and that is, of course, wide receiver, the talk of the offseason. They have a 0.4 ranking in this list, which is 29th best on the entire NFL, and I get it. There's no true number one wide receiver, and they have a bunch of unproven rookies to this point. They lost Devontae Adams, a guy who had 169 targets last year, and this grade, it makes sense. I definitely think right now they surely are in the 20s, but personally, I don't see them as 29. I don't think by any way, shape, or form they have a worse wide receiver group than the Chicago Bears, given it's only by 0.1, but still. The Bears' wide receiver room, in my opinion, is the worst in the NFL. It's definitely worse than the Packers. As for their second worst position group, it follows right after this with tight end. They have a 0.6 grade, which ranks 27th in the NFL. And I think that's about right for them in this position. Tunyon's coming back from an injury, and before his ACL injury last year, he really wasn't playing well to begin with when you compare it to his 2020 season where he exploded with a bunch of yards and touchdowns. Mercedes Lewis is a blocking tight end, and outside of that, they only have Josiah DeGuara, who hasn't proven much in the NFL to this point, Tyler Davis, a guy who just got on their team last year and hasn't done much either, and Dominique Daphne. So not a great room. I do think they'll be all right this year, but I think this is a very fair rank here. As for the last position group on offense, we have offensive line as a whole, and he gave them a 2.9 grade, which is the 10th best offensive line in the NFL on this list. I think they'll be much higher than this, but this grade, as it speaks right now, makes sense because David Bakhtiari isn't officially back yet. Elton Jenkins isn't back yet, but when both of those guys return, if they do return 100%, I think it'll be much higher than 10th best. But right now, I do get this ranking. And it's actually quite high given the circumstances because they have a big question mark at both tackle positions. Left tackle, hey, is Bakhtiari going to go in training camp? Is he going to be ready for week 1? And at right tackle, Elton Jenkins likely is going to start on the PUP. Who are they going to put at right tackle? Josh Nijman, Royce Newman, Zach Tom. We really don't know to this point. So to still have a top 10 offensive line unit under this grade, that's pretty impressive. And I made a video about this whole entire offensive line unit, how I think they could be a very dangerous unit this upcoming season. If you want to check that video out, just click the link right above. And I do think they will end up as a top 3 offensive line group this year if they remain healthy. Now flipping over to the defensive side of the ball, and we have defensive line, and this one surprised me. They gave the Packers a 3.5 grade, which I was surprised to see this value this high, actually. Kenny Clark, hey, super good. One of the best defensive linemen in the league. But outside of that, they really have, typically average Dean Lowry, first-round rookie Devontae Wyatt, who I think will be good, but he hasn't played a snap in the NFL yet. They have second-year unknown of TJ Slayton, who, again, I think will take a nice second-year jump, but it still hasn't happened yet. We still haven't even got into that year yet. An average veteran in Jerron Reed and a rookie in Jonathan Ford. And this value of 3.5 gives them the 5th best defensive line group in the NFL. I just don't know at this exact moment if they're that high yet. I personally see them at like a 3.0, which would give them tied for 9th. I think that's a fair assessment. To give them the 5th already with kind of only one really good defensive lineman as we speak, I think's a little crazy. Now, I'm not saying they couldn't become a great defensive line unit. I think they'll be much better than they were last year, but last year they just weren't good at all. Kenny Clark was really the only good player on that unit, and as I said, Dean Lowry was just average, but I think they will be a good unit, but I'm speaking as of right now as these rankings are set out. I just don't see them as a 3.5. And the next biggest surprise was right after this with Edge. They gave them a 2.3. I think these two groups should almost be flip-flopped. I mean, this one just confuses me. I feel it should be much higher, even higher than defensive line, like I said. Rashawn Gary is a rising star and a defensive player of the year candidate to many people for this upcoming year. Preston Smith is a great veteran who had a really nice year last year. I think the only knock on this entire group would be the lack of depth. They have Jonathan Garvin, who's an okay depth guy. They drafted Kingsley Enagbare, who I think will be a decent depth guy, and then Tipa Nalii, Randy Ramsey, a couple other depth guys that are, decent rotational guys, but nothing wild. I guess you could say they lost Zadarius Smith, I suppose, but he didn't even play last year except for a couple drives in the first game and the playoff game, so I don't know how that would really lower them that much. I think they should definitely be above a 3.0 here. A 2.3 is really, really low for me. A 2.3 ranks them 15th in the NFL, and I think they do have a top 10 edge room just based off of Rashawn Gary and Preston Smith, so I just don't agree with this ranking. I think, like I said, defensive line and edge should almost be flip-flopped here. As for the next group in linebackers, he gave them a 3.0, and this would rank them 9th. I think this is very low for them. They have an all-pro inside linebacker in Devondre Campbell from last year, a first-round rookie, and a solid starter caliber linebacker in Chris Barnes. Those are three really, solid starter caliber linebackers in this unit. I see them as a top 3 linebacker unit, not 9th. I personally just don't see how the Vikings, Saints, and Rams have a higher rank here than the Packers at linebacker. Now, I understand why the 49ers, the Colts, and the Buccaneers would. That much I can agree upon, but I'd put them in the mix with those 3 teams, not far behind them. Moving on to cornerback, their second highest graded unit in the entire team with a 3.9, and they are ranked, with this grade, they are ranked 2nd in the entire NFL, and for the right reasons. This cornerback room, for lack of better words, is stacked. Probably the best top 3 cornerbacks in the NFL for one room, and likely why they're 2nd and not 1st is their 4th cornerback spot. Is it Shamar Jean-Charles? Is it Kayshawn Nixon? It's kind of holding them back at this point. They don't have really solid depth past the first 3 guys, and the Dolphins, who are ranked number 1, do. They have very good depth at cornerback. But I'm super excited to see this cornerback room in action. I think it's going to be the best cornerback room we've had since 2010. Year 2 of Eric Stokes, who had a very impressive rookie year. Healthy Jair, hopefully, comes back to that all-pro top corner in the league form. And then, of course, the addition of Rasul Douglas last year was just a shock to everyone. Such a great veteran ad, played out of his mind. So happy they brought him back. Can't wait for these 3 cornerbacks. And for the last position group on this team, they have safety at a 3.3. And I think this is a little overrated. They rank them the 7th best safety group in the NFL. Now, don't get me wrong, Adrian Amos is amazing. He's probably one of the most underrated safeties in the entire NFL. But last year, Darnell Savage had a down year, and I do think he'll turn it around. I love Darnell Savage. I do think he'll get better this year. But last year, he had a bad year. I mean, we all know that. My main concern here, outside of that, is their depth. They really have no depth. I think this is their weakest unit on the defense, just based on depth. Obviously, like I said, Adrian Amos, great player. Darnell Savage, I think, will turn it around. But outside of those 2, they really don't have anyone else. They don't have a true third safety yet. Could Sean Davis become that? Maybe. Vernon Scott's been a disappointment. Ennis Gaines and Trey Sterling are both undrafted free agents, and that's a concern to me. And personally, I think they should be ranked around number 12 here, at best, not 7th. So this list actually doesn't incorporate special teams, so I guess that's kind of for the better for their overall team ranking for the Green Bay Packers. So let's move on to the team ranking. So for the overall team ranking for the Packers, they have a 3.0, which ranks them 3rd in the NFL. I feel like this is correct. I'm happy with this grade. They are 8th on offense with a 1.6 grade, and I think the lack of a true wide receiver / tight end right now kind of makes that accurate. I'm also okay with 8th for offense. But more importantly, they rank number 1 in the entire NFL on defense with a 1.3. And I do think on paper, the Packers do have the best defense right now in the NFL. Now, will they put it all together in game? We'll see. But from front 7 to defensive backs, they just have so much talent. And I couldn't be more hyped to finally see this defense in action in a couple months. But overall, I do agree with most of these rankings. Obviously, there's a few I think that could be adjusted. But overall, I think they're pretty accurate. And oh yeah, shout out to the Bears with the 30th ranked team and a 0.1 offensive line. But that does it for Mike Clay's team rankings. What do you think of these rankings? Do you agree? Do you disagree? If so, what groups would you change and why? Just leave that down in the comments below. But that about does it for this video. I'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching. As always, go Pack Go.